Good morning, everyone. From the Association ENOL, we're offering you this second set of international conferences on high capacities and gifted students. I'd like to introduce now some of our speakers. One of them is a dear, young and talented man that is bringing us his insight. Very generous, very brave. He's sharing his feelings, especially, and his experiences along his life. His name is García Castellano. He's got a degree in computing engineering. He's an entrepreneur in different companies and projects related to telecommunications. He's got financial knowledge and law knowledge. He's an expert in cybersecurity and programming trainer and full stack developer. But I think that the best he can offer is his own personal experience. Thank you very much, Eric. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are watching this conference and whatever time it is. I'd like to thank you all that you're watching me. I really want to thank you from my heart because this is very important for me. I hope I can reach many. My name is Eric Garcia. And I'm going to talk about the difficulties that the fact of being a gifted person brought to in my life, especially when I was a kid and a teenager. But still, initially I wasn't identified until I was 12, and then I was identified, but just with a label. As it said, this set of conferences and talks, but nobody gave the required relevance to what it meant. I was just identified and that was it. I always knew I was a very different person to the rest. It's difficult to say how in certain steps in your life what that means. And to explain it in short, it could make us get a wrong definition. And it could be misunderstood completely what we actually wanted to share. So before I tell you my story, I think that, especially for my peace of mind, and especially for those of you who have never read or listened what is a gifted person, I'm going to give you a description, a definition, to see what we are. But it also has many more things. It goes much further, but I think you can have a general idea of what we are. We are different people to the rest. Very different, quite different actually, for many reasons. We don't like saying it very often, but then we see that there's nothing wrong with it. We're just different. We're better, we're worse, depending on every area, just like everyone else. We're more peculiar than the rest usually because we're out of the normal rule. We're not like the rest in some areas. For us, it's essential to be people like us, people with whom we feel comfortable, where we can express ourselves without being judged or analyzed. We also have a way of being that cannot be changed. We cannot try change it. Because it can actually lead to terrible conflicts of all sorts, depending on the situations in which we are. Conflict and an internal fight that can be never ending, especially in our teenage thoughts. We have emotions, feelings, and thoughts that are very intense, and sometimes it's very difficult to deal with them. Not just because of their intensity, but also because of their quantity. We react differently to everything, and we lead our emotions even further. Some of the things that have an influence on this are hyperesthesia, a very developed capacity of our 5 senses, more developed than normal, an extreme empathy, a feeling of what is right and what is wrong, about justice, usually more developed than anyone else's. But we also have to add that these features and these adjectives are not present in all of us. We are all different amongst ourselves too. We react very different also to everything that is around us. Our brain is very difficult to leave it calm. It never rests. There's lots of neuron connection, brain connections. We have a lack of capacity of being able to identify what information is relevant for us and which one isn't. Sometimes, and without wanting to, we try to remember everything that we see. Everything we see, we touch, we smell, we hear. So something impossible. And this sometimes makes us forget something that is probably not very relevant. So we remember not very relevant details and we can forget relevant details, and then we can be judged as having a terrible memory, but absolutely that's not the case. We have very good memory. Prison Break, there's a character in Prison Break that seemed to be a very developed, latent inhibited profile. It had a very similar, slightly different but somehow similar profile to ours. Our right hemisphere works much harder. We connect ideas much more to our feelings. Instead of thinking things with our mind logically, we associate very much ideas and feelings. We have very developed abilities that if we know how to use them properly, we can be very productive. In most cases, at least. Let's put it that way, more or less. Creativity, concentration, that can make us forget about listening. Our outside, a strong intuition that it seems that we can predict the future, but it's not that. It's just that it's a mix between our huge amount of memories, our unconscious thought, our capacity of analysis. We can give an answer to something, to a certain situation, in a very quick way and a very accurate way in most cases. This doesn't mean that we won't get it wrong, of course not. Very often we make mistakes, like anyone else, of course. All this and much more are the elements that can make us feel really set aside, sometimes because of our own attitude, sometimes because of the environment, or both combined. Sometimes we might not be able to understand what we're feeling, what happens to us, how we are. We can have reactions that come from our inside to self-protect us, even though it can lead to actions that probably don't make full sense or no sense at all. It's very important to help and to accompany kids from the beginning and to assess their capacities, of course, but also not just to the kids, but also to the teenagers and adults, so they can understand who they are, why they are like that, and we can help them love themselves and have self-esteem they deserve, and to be able to enjoy everything that's within us and that we don't want to show. So we should know how to love ourselves, have our self-esteem, and be able to know what's inside us. We shouldn't act or look like the rest, because we're not like them. We are the way we are. We need to accept this, and we have to enjoy it. That is very important, please. Because not knowing who we are can hinder and can prevent our real character, and we'll try temper, and we'll try to turn into someone else, something that we're not. If this happens, It's much more difficult to know further on in life what we are, what we have inside, and to identify everything. It can lead to a long struggle, and I won't say it's impossible, but it will be very, very complicated. Now, I will tell you a bit about my story, about my life. I remember very dearly that when I was very little, I had a very exacerbated feeling of justice. My first year of school, I was in my grandma's village, in the most conflictive school. Older kids would throw stones at us, would make us wet. I had no friends. I didn't talk to anyone. I was different. I would only talk to adults. And I somehow felt trust built before. I needed trust before I would talk to them. A boy and a girl that were twins, they took my new colors. I was only 3 years old. I didn't tell the teacher, I didn't tell anyone, because I felt ashamed. They were picked up a bit later, like me, after the classes. And one day I got my colors back, my crayons back, because I knew very well that what they were doing was not right. And I was not afraid to face them, but I was afraid, and I was ashamed to ask for help. I knew that I could do it myself. I didn't need that help. I was different and independent to the rest, and I felt good. The year after, I remember that they asked me at some point, "What would you want to be when you grow up?" I said I want to be a lawyer. It was amazing that a kid that was only 3 years old, I wasn't 4, could understand what a lawyer did. My feeling and my concept and my sense for justice was amazing. It was very deep. I could understand. I had a very developed understanding capacity, but not so much communicating. I was very introverted. As I said, I needed big trust on others before I could communicate. When I was 5, I remember lying, trying to be the friends of the coolest kids, the most popular kids, those that would talk to everyone, and meeting my 2 best friends and individually, and telling one that he was my best friend and the other, "No, you are my best friend." I was trying to have it all, and I was trying them not to get away from me because I was afraid of being alone. I would tell lies to them so that I could be respected and valued. I couldn't express myself. I didn't have a very wide range of vocabulary, but I had such deep thoughts and such difficult thoughts that I could not express them. At that age, you don't have vocabulary for those deep thoughts, so that makes communication even harder. I remember looking at the whole classroom. I was 5, and they were only focused in the teacher, and I could be paying attention in a great deal to them, to the sounds, to the smells, to the touch of the table, to temperature, etc. I remember I had huge debates within me when I realized that some of the syllables in the words, I could feel the stressed syllables in the words, and I thought I was the only person in the world who could realize about those stressed words, and I couldn't understand why that was there. Why were we being taught that way? I had the feeling that they weren't telling us everything. I had the same problem with the sounds of the alphabet, with the letters. I studied in depth. I analyzed the sounds that they didn't tell us that existed till 2 or 3 years later. In Catalonia, Spain, where I was born, We have a tradition for kids for Christmas. We have a log with a face on it and some legs and a hat that is called the tío. It's covered with a blanket. We sing to that, and then that log would poo presents for everyone. We sing the song, and then, oh, there's presents under the blanket. And I remember how everyone was being pulled their leg, except for me. They had to turn around, and suddenly there were presents where they hadn't been before. It was clear what the parents were doing. I could hear the wardrobe opening and closing, while on the other side we're being distracted. The teacher was distracting us. But it wasn't only that. I knew that it was physically impossible. Magic doesn't exist, or at least I was sure about it at that point. What I couldn't understand was why they were cheating on us. I felt really helpless there. I was afraid of saying what I could see, and I was afraid of being punished. I would not talk about it. I was very ashamed. I don't know why, really. I was so ashamed and so embarrassed, but it was a feeling that I had. I think it was probably more fear than shame. When I was 6 to 7, I was extremely curious about things. I did really weird things. To know why of things. There was so much that didn't make any sense in life that I needed to discover further. I discovered that parents were the ones bringing Christmas presents, and I told everyone in the classroom. And I know that many mums were angry at my mum, but it wasn't fair for me, because it wasn't fair that those kids were being cheated on, that they were not being told the truth. I had argued with the whole classroom, even with the teacher, for very often, for things that they were teaching us, and I knew that was not right, that was not so. There were things missing, or they were not explaining it to us clearly. Sometimes they accepted that I was right, but very, very often they wouldn't. There was something strange. I mean, I was crazy. No, not at all. I was very smart. I was very intelligent. I was 6 times faster when adding than my colleagues. I remember that we had 30 minutes and I was done in 5 or 6. And they would tell me, I would say, I'm done. And everyone would look at me like, oh. I grew up. Nobody understood me. I was bullied. I was envied by my colleagues very often. Many other times, I was also respected. I was loved by my teachers. But I was also discriminated by others. I was set aside. They were very heavy emotional loads for a kid. A kid who was not receiving the right education for the way he was working and understanding things. They were preventing me from my own development, from my own potential. And they were creating some conflicts within me that were very complex to deal with. And I couldn't deal with them. I couldn't talk to anyone about them. I didn't know who I could share this with. I thought I was mad. And I carried on like this for a long time. Trying to push you to be what someone wants you to be and what you are not. And you don't want that. Trying to resist and to evade yourself. It's a real fight, and you can get into really terrible things personally and with your surroundings, with your environment at some point, and I know it has led in many cases to a situation that has changed that kid forever. And we can't let this happen. When I was 12, my mommy finally decided to take me to a psychologist. And it seemed it was a good decision at last. Well, somehow it was. that I was identified as a high intellectual capacity, very high. And they explained to me certain characteristics that we had, this gifted people. But something very general, really. In a very wrong place, because every case is different. And what could happen to us didn't necessarily have to be what could happen to other people. There was a huge uncertainty, lack of knowledge, especially in Spain, about what gifted people are. And there were very, very few experts, and in our school, none, that were capable of helping us appropriately. The thing is that they didn't do anything else. I was identified, and that was it. I had no support from my school, not from a counselor, not from my family. Even at school, a psychologist told my mummy not to tell me. Not to tell me that I was a gifted person. Because they thought I would just show off. I wasn't. I knew. I knew when I had something inside, I had to let it go. I was very humble. I was just a kid, a very humble kid. And not tell me? Come on, why? To make me be someone normal? Well, at least my mum did it right. She told me, even if she didn't do anything else. They made a very big mistake with me, and it has been done with thousands of kids all over the world, and it's still being done. I was left there. I was abandoned with a total lack of knowledge of what I should do, how I should know myself, how I should behave. What was I supposed to do after that? What would I have to investigate? Did I have to do it myself? What did I have to do? I didn't know. Yes, maybe I had the capacities, but I needed to learn. I needed to be taught, to work with them. And from then on, my life was even harder, more intense, with more extreme situations. I was starting to grow, and life gets harder. I've always tended to make my things harder, make my life harder. Since then, yes. To get my objectives, to reach them in the most difficult situations, I've made things even worse, even more difficult. Something that sometimes has made my life very difficult, really. I placed hurdles to myself. I didn't even know why. I just knew that I liked challenges. I would get bored otherwise. I needed to get the best of me. High school was another phase that was difficult, but at the age of 25 I started therapy and started knowing myself, and during all these years I was completely misunderstood. Very good student, very good marks, but in high school I was a rebel. I didn't like being told what I had to do. If I was let free, then I would do things probably better and faster. I would make an effort and I obtained great results. But if they told me strictly, you have to do this, and the way I had to do it, then I changed it all and I did it. I would do it the way I wanted, the way that I thought it was coherent and it made sense, and what was the most optimal way of doing it. In most cases I had excellent marks, and just with what I was hearing at the back of the classroom, because my hand had 7 more things at the same time. I was at 7 different places at the same time. I then started working, even having my own businesses since I was 18. I've also worked for other people, and that was very uncomfortable for me, because I found it very difficult to comply with other people's organization when I didn't agree with it. I still don't. I can work with other people, but I often see that my opinion is more correct. And I wanted to improve. I wanted a constant improvement. That's something I like. I optimize processes, and there was also a huge discussion around that. When I was 25, as I was telling you, I started thinking about feeling an interest of who I was. I always wanted to know about anything, to learn about things, but I was so blocked that I didn't think that those deep thoughts could flourish that way. I had been imagining for years a great deal of what I was, but I needed help to explore it. I discovered an all association, and I'm sorry if my name is not right, but Jean-Shu Fajing. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I still remember that Sunday evening. It was the day in which my life started to make sense. When I saw the conferences that had been done in Oviedo, when I saw the previous year conferences, I don't remember if it was that year, I would cry when listening to Jean. And I remember how long that video lasted, 1 hour 44 minutes 55 seconds. It all started making sense. I started feeling and knowing who I was. And in that afternoon, I had the strongest emotions I have ever had in my life. My mind suddenly unblocked all those memories that needed to be released and understood. I don't know what feeling we have when we're born, but I think I was being born again. I felt from head to toes, I was on the ground, but I was flying. I could feel I knew who I was and that my life was starting at that moment. Thank you very much, Jan, for your work and for what you're still doing. Thank you, Lolly, for creating the association. And thank you, Mr. Berchi, for pushing and promoting this creation, for convincing her. Without you and all the people who have worked along these years with the association, I probably would have never unblocked that past. I would have never become what I really am, in what I really want to be. Now I'm an amazing person. I enjoy who I am and with everything that I do every day. A great deal of my life I work in cybersecurity, and together with it I offer this work to society and to all those people that need my help. Gifted and non-gifted. I help them as much as I can. I love helping. I need to do it. I need it to feel good. My life has given me an outstanding and extraordinary experience, much more intense. Going through the crisis of the 40s at 20 is unusual. My brain is very intense. Our brain age is much higher to our real age. And that, connected to my capacities, helps me change many people's lives. My experience, my abilities, my characteristics. My life has been so intense as to write a potentially bestseller. I will write it someday, and you will all know. It's time to say goodbye. Thank you very much. Thank you. To all of you who have spent this time to listen to me, I hope you've liked my talk, and I hope it will help you the same way it helped me listening to Jean. And please remember that nothing ever is by chance. There is a reason to everything. I'm sorry I'm feeling emotional, but I'm so happy. So happy to share with you, with all of you. Thank you.